Did you know that an economic crisis happening in a distant country can directly affect your life? In today's video, we will understand how global crises impact developing countries, especially those with more fragile economies. Get ready to discover something that may change your perspective on the world's economies. Today, we will explore the profound impact of global economic crises on developing countries. We will analyze how these nations face extreme difficulties during crises and why their recovery is so complex. When we talk about economic crises, we often think of financial collapses in large economies like the United States or Europe. But how do these crises affect the world's most fragile economies? Let's understand what happens when a crisis hits a globalized economy. Global crises, such as the financial crisis of 2008 or the COVID-19 pandemic, have far-reaching effects. They do not only affect wealthy countries but also developing nations. But why does this happen? During the 2008 crisis, many emerging countries like Brazil, India, and South Africa felt the impact of declines in international stock markets, exports, and investment flows. At the same time, smaller countries, such as those in Sub-Saharan Africa, faced an even more drastic downturn in their economies due to their dependence on commodities and volatile markets. The economies of developing countries are more vulnerable for a simple reason. They depend heavily on foreign trade, investment inflows, and exports of commodities such as oil, coffee, metals, and agricultural products. When a global crisis affects these markets, the impact is direct. For example, when demand for oil or agricultural products decreases, countries that rely on these exports see their revenues drop, which can result in unemployment, increased poverty, and recession. In countries like Nigeria and Venezuela, a drop in oil prices had devastating effects on the local economy. Moreover, during economic crises, investors tend to withdraw their resources from emerging markets in search of safety in developed countries. This capital flight results in a shortage of money for financing essential projects, such as infrastructure and public services. Another typical effect of a global economic crisis is inflation. The depreciation of the local currency due to the crisis can cause the prices of essential goods to soar dramatically. In Brazil, for example, the inflation of 2008 was a direct reflection of the global financial crisis, resulting in a decrease in the population's purchasing power. Despite many countries recovering from global economic crises, the recovery of developing countries is always slower. And why does this happen? These countries often have economies based on unstable sectors, such as agriculture and the extraction of natural resources. They also face an unstable political environment, which can hinder the implementation of effective economic policies during recovery. Another crucial factor is poverty and social inequality. During crises, the poorest are the most affected, and the lack of robust social welfare policies makes recovery even more challenging. Even if the global economy improves, these populations struggle to recover. Many developing countries need to turn to the International Monetary Fund, IMF, or other international institutions for financial help. However, rescue packages are not always an ideal solution, as they often involve austerity measures that can worsen the situation for the local population. Argentina was severely hit by the 2001 crisis, a result of a combination of poorly managed fiscal policies and the global financial crisis. The country had to declare a debt moratorium and implement austerity policies that caused great suffering for the population. Another example is Venezuela. With the drop in oil prices, the country's main source of revenue, the economy collapsed. Inflation reached astronomical levels, and the country saw an exodus of millions of citizens seeking a better life. Recovery seems distant, and the country is experiencing a humanitarian crisis. In Sub-Saharan Africa, many countries rely on the export of commodities such as gold, diamonds, and oil. When global economies slow down, these countries suffer directly from falling prices of these commodities, resulting in less investment and increased poverty. To reduce vulnerability, It is essential for developing countries to seek to diversify their economies. This can be done by encouraging sectors such as technology, education, and innovation. Countries like Singapore and South Korea are examples of nations that have managed to recover after crises precisely because they diversified their economies. Additionally, governments should create internal social welfare policies, increase investment in infrastructure, and ensure that natural resources are managed sustainably. As we have seen, global economic crises deeply affect developing countries, and their recovery requires much more than just financial measures. They need to build a solid and resilient economic foundation to face these challenges. If you found this analysis interesting, like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming videos on how the global economy shapes our lives. Until next time.